Hey everyone, welcome to CF Online. My name is Christian Vandenheuvel and I serve as the pastor for our online community, and I'm really glad that you joined us today. One of our values as a church is to live life in community with each other, and that's why on our neighborhood church weekends, we open up a Zoom room right after the 5 p.m. service on Saturday and after the 9 a.m. service on Sunday, and it gives us this chance to really see each other, hear each other, and learn from one another. And for me, it's been one of the most encouraging, one of the most life-giving parts of the last 6 years. And honestly, it's just also really nice to be in a Zoom meeting where no one is talking about quarterly reports or screen sharing the wrong document. Have you had that? I cannot urge you enough to stick around for Neighborhood Church Online immediately following that message. We connect, we talk, and today we also take communion together. So look around your space for cracker or bread or juice that you can bring to the table. Communion has become one of the sweetest parts of our time together, even through a screen. But then also, if you live in the East Bay and you want to check out one of the neighborhood church homes on the second Sunday of the month, let me know and I'll connect you with someone. I also want to say thank you for all of you for donating to our church, donating to your church. I know many things are getting much more expensive, and so your generosity is so appreciated. It keeps this ministry going and allows us to care for people in important and meaningful ways. It really does matter. Thank you. And as we continue to barrel down the weeks towards Christmas, there's all sorts of Christmas Eve, services, events coming up. You can find all the details on our website. It's a great month to invite someone to join you. And inviting someone to church in December is statistically the least stressful ask you can make, so just go for it. And finally, if you want to go a little deeper with today's message from John Orozco, we have questions and notes available for you. You can follow the QR code on the screen here. Some of us like to actually have a little time to think through the questions before we meet with others, so feel free to check those out anytime, starting right now. Thanks again for being with us today, and let's get started with our last message in the series on Luke that took us all year long, and Pastor John Orozco is here to remind us that if you've ever felt like you were walking in the wrong direction in life, or you're wrestling with disappointment or confusion about where God is in your story, well, God may actually be closer than you think. So I can't wait. Welcome to Cornerstone Fellowship.
Well, all year we've been studying the book of Luke in our neighborhood church gatherings. And if you're new with us, once a month we meet in homes instead of buildings, and we slow down and eat together and consider the words and the activity of Jesus and how we as a community can mirror his movements in our lives today. And so this is the conclusion of our study in the book of Luke. And if we haven't met yet, my name is John. I'm a pastor here at Cornerstone, and I have a confession. When it comes to games that I care deeply about, I don't just love to win, I need to win. Whether it's watching my favorite sports teams or coaching my own teams or competing in any way myself, I love that feeling of victory. How about you? And it's not just the actual win, it's the cascade of things that follow the win. The rest of the day feels lighter, the conversations are richer, the food tastes better, life is good, life is really good. Well, unfortunately, on the other side of that love of winning, of victory, is that feeling of hating to lose. And it's not just the actual loss, but the cascade of events that follow the feeling of a defeat. Sometimes my wife, she'll look at me while I'm watching intently a game that I like, and she'll say, "John, if you lose this game, it better not ruin your mood." Because if my team loses, she knows that I'll need at least 5 minutes of quiet, of silence. The day, it feels darker, it feels heavier. I might need to go for a walk or Sometimes, listen, I just need to get away from people just so I can ruminate over what could have or should have been done differently in order to get the win. Listen, proportionate to my love of winning is my hatred for losing. Can you relate to that? Probably not, because unlike me, you're a normal person, a functioning human being. Well, today, as we conclude our study in the Gospel of Luke, we're going to be in a story that'll expand our understanding of what victory means. So get your Bibles or phones and let's get ready to dive into Luke by opening up to Luke 24, verse 13 through 35. But first, let me offer a little bit of context for the story we'll be in today. And it starts on a Sunday unlike any other. Jesus, he's risen from the dead, but Jesus's followers, they don't know it yet. And the week leading up to this moment, it was filled with the highest of highs. And those highs were followed by the lowest of lows. So let's run it back. It was a Sunday before this Sunday, Palm Sunday, and there was celebration of Jesus. He's arriving in Jerusalem and there are crowds, and Jesus rides in on a donkey's colt, and people are exalting him and following after him. And his followers are watching him and they're feeling like they're witnessing the embodiment of victory, of triumph itself. And then Monday comes and Jesus, he's turning over tables and he's breaking down these corrupt power structures in the church, in the temple, and his followers are believing that systems of oppression were going to change because of who Jesus is. And then Tuesday comes and Jesus, he's teaching about this new thing, the kingdom of heaven, a kingdom unlike any other kingdom anyone had ever experienced. And I can only imagine as the disciples are hearing his words, they're just thinking, okay, something's going to change in our lives. We're going to win. And then Wednesday comes and Jesus, he's at Simon the leper's house and he's anointed by Mary with an alabaster jar and she would pour it over his head. And though his followers, his disciples, wouldn't understand what this gesture fully meant, they knew they couldn't argue that Jesus was worthy of it, worthy of praise, exaltation, worthy to be celebrated. And then Thursday would come and Jesus would do this new thing. This first communion, and he would talk about how his body would be broken and his blood would be poured out. And he would wash their feet, and they wouldn't comprehend it, but one thing that they knew, one thing that they believed was that Jesus was willing to give everything for them. I mean, in this moment, in their minds, I could only believe that they thought, they assumed they were winning, that things were going to change, that Jesus was this combination of powerful and humble and formidable and intelligent and gracious. This Jesus that they knew, he was driven with a determination they'd never seen before. But in a moment, everything seemed to change. That Thursday night, Jesus would be visibly distressed, praying for strength in a garden. He'd be betrayed by Judas and arrested. He would go through 6 trials, each one meant to silence the power of his words. Each trial had the intention of stopping his activity on the earth. He would be mocked and spat on and beaten, and eventually he would find himself carrying a cross to the Mount of Skulls. He would be buried in a grave along with all of the hopes and dreams of those who dared to follow and believe in him. And it happened so suddenly. His followers were all caught off guard. I can almost imagine the silence as they watched all of this unfold in disbelief. And what was ringing loud in their hearts and their minds was a question asked by people who are perpetually feeling defeated, despondent. Will we ever win at life? Will we ever see a victory? Well, let's open our Bibles and start at verse 13 in Luke 24. Verse 13, it says this: that same day, 2 of Jesus' followers were walking to the village of Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem. As they walked along, they were talking about everything that had happened. And they talked and discussed these things, and Jesus himself suddenly came and began walking with them. But God kept them from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing so intently as you walk along?" They stopped short, sadness written across their face. Then one of them, Cleopas, replied, "You must be the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about all the things that have happened there in the last few days." "What things?" Jesus asked. "The things that happened to Jesus, the man from Nazareth," they said. "He was a prophet who did powerful miracles. And he was mighty teacher in the eyes of God and all the people, but our leading priests and other religious leaders handed him over to be condemned to death, and they crucified him. We had hoped that he was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. This all happened 3 days ago. Then some women from our group of his followers were at the tomb early this morning. They came back with an amazing report. They said his body was missing, and they had seen angels who told them Jesus is alive. Some of our men ran out to see, and sure enough, his body was gone, just as the women had said." Then Jesus said to them, You foolish people, you find it so hard to believe that all that the prophets wrote in Scripture. Wasn't it clearly predicted that the Messiah would have to suffer all these things before entering his glory? Then Jesus took them through the writings of Moses and all the prophets, explaining from all the Scriptures the things concerning himself. By this time, they were nearing Emmaus and the end of their journey, and Jesus acted as if he was going on. But they begged him, "Stay the night with us, since it's getting late." So he went home with them. Verse 30, as they sat down to eat, he took the bread and blessed it. Then he broke it and gave it to them. Suddenly their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and at that moment he disappeared. They said to each other, "Didn't our hearts burn within us as he talked with us on the road and explained the Scriptures to us?" And within the hour they were on their way back to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 disciples and others who had gathered with them, who said, "The Lord has really risen." He appeared to Peter. Then the 2 from Emmaus told their story of how Jesus had appeared to them as they were walking along the road, and how they had recognized him as he was breaking the bread. So 2 travelers are making the 7-mile journey from Jerusalem to Emmaus. A journey that over a century and a half ago was marked by an important moment in their history, this massive victory for their people. 7 miles that will remind them of the famous Battle of Emmaus. It was in 165 BC when this legendary priest, Judah Maccabee, led a revolt against their oppressors. This is what he did. He traveled through the night with his army from Mizpah, just north of Jerusalem, to Emmaus. And there he ambushed their enemies and won. But decades later, on this day, after Jesus had been crucified, these 2 travelers were traveling during the day on a path, the same path towards Emmaus. But it was different. They were disconnected from the feeling of triumph and victory. They were feeling a deep sense of loss. It says in verse 16, sadness was written across their faces. I imagine that they feel like I do after a loss, just wanting to get away from everyone. So they left their people. They left the crowds. They left everything, feeling hopeless. They were having one of those conversations where you're still in disbelief, ruminating over everything that had just happened. And in this moment, suddenly, Jesus, who they did not recognize because God intentionally hid his face from them, joins them on their journey. Verse 17, it says this, Jesus asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" Well, they stood still, their faces downcast. And that's the thing about the feeling of loss, the feeling of defeat. It sent them in the wrong direction, away from their people, away from their community. But one thing to note here is that Jesus comes after them, walks with them, even though they're heading the wrong way. And there's been so many moments in my own life where I've felt like that. Where I felt like that about the church, moments where I've wondered if we've got it wrong, if we're just taking L after L after L, moments where I've thought to myself that distance from both Jesus and his church would be better than hanging around. How about you? Or how about when life is just handing you loss after loss after loss? How about moments where it's just the perpetual sickness and discomfort in your own body, or the mental health struggles, or someone you love who is struggling in that way? How about the loss of a loved one, or the loss of a job or relationship? I mean, these things have a way of moving us from people. And more than that, these constant disappointments in life, they have a way of distorting our desire to even have a relationship with God. Now, I don't know who this is for, but let me tell you that even when I've tried to remove myself from Jesus and his church, I've found Jesus graciously walking with me. And I pray that you discover that too, wherever you are in your journey. Well, let's keep reading verse 18 and 19. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" Verse 19, what things, he asked. And so let's pick back up with these travelers and what they tell Jesus. They don't know that he's alive, so notice how they use past tense language. Let's jump to verse 20. This is what they're saying. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him, verse 21. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. These two travelers explain some more about the rumors of his resurrection, but in this moment, they don't believe it. So Jesus then responds in verse 25. He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken." Listen, when Jesus is rebuking these two with the word foolish, he's saying that they're foolish because he knows that they know their history. A history that had already redefined what it actually means to win, what it actually means to know victory. And so they're slow to believe in proportion to their knowledge of God's ultimate plan. But know this isn't just a scolding, it's an invitation. Jesus doesn't just leave them in their confusion. He reminds them of everything that had already been spoken and promised. So Jesus continues on by reminding them of what needed to happen. Verse 26 and 27. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory? In verse 27, and beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all scriptures concerning himself. What we know is that as Jesus was explaining these things to them, their hearts, these listeners, these travelers, their hearts began to burn. There was this burning. So we skip ahead to verse 32, and they asked each other, were our hearts not burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened up the scriptures to us? What was that burning in their hearts? Listen, that burning was the feeling of victory. A victory that they assumed didn't belong to them. Because Jesus, he was crucified, right? Their current oppressors were still oppressing them. The current kingdom was still in place and in power. But this experience for them was nothing like what they remembered about the battle of Emmaus. And still, their hearts burned as if something was won. Which begs the question, what is victory? In a more pointed way, what is the victory of the cross? Well, let's keep reading verse 28 through 32. Verse 28, as they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he were going further. Verse 29, but they urged him strongly, stay with us, for it's nearly evening. The day is almost over. So he went in to stay with them. Verse 30, when he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. Look what happens here. He breaks the bread, he gives it to them, and they reach for it, and then suddenly their eyes are opened. You want to know what victory is? It's not what we would generally imagine. And in this moment, it highlights two things about the nature of victory. Listen, victory is every hand that has ever reached for the bread. Every hand that has ever taken hold of the cup. Every life submitted to the work of Jesus, dedicated to following him despite the circumstances that surround. Every movement towards the victory of the cross of Christ over sin and death, every movement towards establishing his kingdom here on earth. A kingdom that does not impose its will by force, like the priest Judah and that Maccabee revolt. No, this is a different kind of high priest. This is Jesus, victorious in a new way. Well, let's keep reading. Verse 33 through 35, it says this, they got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together, verse 34, and saying, it is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon. Then the two told what had happened on their way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. Once they recognized him that evening, they got up and returned to the people they left, traveling from Emmaus to Jerusalem through the night. Unlike Judah Maccabee and his army, they weren't traveling through the night to conquer, but to commune, to gather with their people, a people that they were never meant to leave. And so here's the second thing about the nature of the victory of Jesus. It's found in the gathering of believers. It's in the neighborhood churches that gather. It's in the groups that gather. It's in the groups that move towards each other. It's in the missional expression of service that happens communally throughout this church. It's in the weekend experiences where a body of believers turns towards one another. And not just when times are good, but especially when times are tough, we gather. And when we do, we are the living proof of the victory of Jesus. And I love this next moment. Once they were all together, after these travelers made their journey through the night back to Jerusalem, it says this in verse 36, while they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, peace be with you. Jesus went after those who had walked away. And Jesus himself brought the crew back together and showed them what true victory looks like. Listen, in a moment, we're going to be reminded of the victory that we share. Gathered in our homes together, we're going to take the bread and the cup. And so I'm going to hand it over to each home. And in this moment, we're going to take communion, share communion. And as we reach for the bread, as we reach for the cup, we declare that we share victory. Let me pray. God, I just thank you so much for this redefinition of what it means to know victory that you've given us, that it's shared in community, in homes, that it's understood through your body broken and your blood poured out, which we receive. We love you. Give you all the glory. Amen.
All year long, during our second Sunday of the month, Neighborhood Church weekends, we've walked slowly through the book of Luke, and we've come to the end of the year and the end of the book.
We did it.
You
Ran
closed
that
out the
marathon.
book. We ran. Did it feel like a marathon?
I don't know.
You wanna
Did
talk
it?
about
You
that?
tell me. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's only once a month, so
Yeah,
it was really good, and I loved
it.
I loved your take on the Road to Emmaus story. You started off by telling us how much you love winning.
Love it.
And how winning is just like, the best thing. What victory this week have you experienced that may not look like much, but it's actually a real win for the kingdom?
For the kingdom, so that's very
I don't know.
specific.
Maybe I
Man, that makes me feel like I need to pat myself on the back for doing some kingdom work. You know what I mean? I don't know. This message, maybe? Let's say that.
That was the win.
Yeah, that was a win.
Yeah, I wrote a message. I delivered a message.
Words were said.
That was the win.
Yeah.
I won.
Yeah.
Well,
there it is.
congratulations,
Yeah,
John.
thank you.
I feel good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is exciting. All right, good. Hey, you talked about how the travelers in the story did not recognize Jesus until they sat at the table with him. I'm assuming, I'm thinking that there's some people here today who cannot see God right now. And do you have perhaps a simple practice for them that might help them become more aware of where God is at work or where God's walking with them in their everyday life?
Yeah, that's a great question. What was interesting, when they saw God, they saw him the moment he reminded them of sacrifice. And the moment they saw this expression that reminded them of something really difficult that happened on the cross, they just recognized that love does exist, and love was right there in front of them. And so, man, if you struggle to see God with you, or you struggle to know that God is near you, my best advice is just look at the cross and really deeply think about it, consider it, and know that it was meant for you. And there's something about that eliminates distance from God when you recognize that sacrifice. I mean, we love stories, like that's the apex generally of every story. And for some reason, our hearts burn when we see someone willing to give their life in every narrative that we watch for somebody else. And so the best advice I can give is just to witness that. And my prayer is that you see that distance shrink, and then as close as you are to me, you recognize that Jesus is right there with you.
Do you speak of it metaphorically, like look at the cross, or would you suggest that
Read the stories.
Read the story.
Yeah.
Hang a cross up in your house, or
just read the stories.
Read the story.
Read the story. That's all I can say. There's just something about a story that gets right into the places that we try to close off, breaks through. And if you're truly trying to seek that, like you're saying, whoever this person is, they're thinking about, how do I know? If you're really seeking that, my best answer is to read the story. Because there's something where you read it, and then you also lay your life at the foot of that cross, and then recognize it was for me. And so knowing that cross was for me also closes the gap, the distance between, because I did this for you. I'm with you. And it's not always, I'm not trying to get formulaic and say it's always perfect. There's moments where maybe we've got so many real things happening in life. It's hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. But I know that God is continually pursuing you, walking with you. Because on that whole journey, Jesus was with them. They didn't recognize it. So there's parts of our journey where Jesus is with us.
Yes.
And I want to acknowledge that.
Yes.
You're seeking to know him. You're seeking to feel closeness with him. Yes, there's going to be loads of time where you're on a 7-mile journey in life, and it's tough thing after tough thing that you're trying to unpack and figure out. But even in those moments, God's with you. And I'm praying for that moment at the end of their journey when they finally realize, as Jesus broke the bread, that people will recognize, oh man, you were with me the whole time. It wasn't just in this moment, it was the whole time.
I have a sense that people are, because of what you just said, are going to experience that this coming week.
I'm praying for that.
They're going to not close the gap, because there's no gap there between God and us. But yeah, I really love that. Thank you so much for that. In the story, the travelers head back to community.
Yeah, that was cool.
As soon as they recognize Jesus.
So cool.
For someone who has drifted from community, who's attending church right now alone because they've drifted away from community, or maybe somebody feels unsure about re-engaging. I don't know. I'm just trying to imagine who is with us today. What would you say is the first, maybe a low pressure, small step that they could take towards others again?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times the thing that we don't want to do is generally the thing that's best for us. And because again, the feeling of loss, the feeling of disappointment, the feeling of, all of the lows in life, it does make you want to isolate. I generally have like low moments and go, hey, let's all hang out now. And this, but so often in life, it's the things that you run away from that you need the most. And so something that's small, some low-hanging fruit, is to join your local community, your local church. Jump in a chat with you and hang out. And no pressure, just be with people. And I don't know what it is, but there's this transference of hope and joy and love, and at least someone who's willing to be with you in your pain. And it's just that word with. The word whether with. It's with Jesus or with people, just allow yourself to be with somebody. And I think this community is a great place to start.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so for somebody who doesn't feel like that, is already, committed, we talk a lot about asking, what does love require? So how does this story, John, help us to understand what love requires when someone in our life is discouraged or confused, or they feel like they're going the wrong direction? What's our role there?
Yeah, I mean, it's simple as coffee. There's if like you're saying, for the person who's already with it and going, yeah, Jesus, I know you're with me, but I also have people in my life who are struggling in so many different ways. More than anything, they just need your presence, and they need you to hear them and listen, and then at some point just to be reminded of who Jesus is in their life too. So I would start there.
Just open up your schedule.
Open up your schedule.
Open up your table.
Yeah. Be willing to do something that seems really small, but actually is Jesus just walking with them and asking them questions, finding out where they were at. And eventually, towards the end of it, he's, okay, we're here now. Let me break this bread with you.
It's my favorite part of church. Yeah. Well, here's a possible next step for you today. I mean, you heard several of them, but I really want to invite you to come back to community. If you've been drifting or isolating or carrying things on your own, you don't need to. Take one small step back towards your people. We're your people. You can join a group. You can reach out to a trusted friend. Join us in neighborhood church, online or in person. The travelers in Luke 24 walked 7 miles in the wrong direction, but when they recognized Jesus, they got up and went back to Jerusalem. They went back to community, and their story changed. So imagine how different our lives would feel if we kept choosing connection over isolation, like John said. That choice could be the beginning of a very different future, and I, for one, cannot wait to connect with you. I want to leave you with one question that will hopefully take this even further. You can use it however you like. You can talk about it in the room you're in. You can type it in the chat, text it to a friend, write it at the top of your notes for today. Here it is. Where in your life do you need to recognize that Jesus might already be walking with you? So glad you were here today. See you next time.